Welcome back. Now, this is video 10 of a 10-part series looking at how to do the Cape Entrepreneurship research paper. This is particularly for Unit 1 of the Cape Entrepreneurship course. Now, I should say also that while there are some videos that are particularly specific to the Cape Entrepreneurship examination, there are other videos in this series looking at research, writing research papers that can be applied generally. So I'll invite you to check them out. All right, so let's jump right into the video. Now, firstly, you want to make sure that you are adhering to the guidelines provided by the entity, which is the examining board that your research paper is to be submitted. Now, you're doing the Cape, I'm speaking specifically here now to those persons who are doing the Cape Entrepreneurship examination. So your guidelines would have been outlined in the Cape Entrepreneurship syllabus. So you want to check that out. You want to make sure that you have a copy of the syllabus and that you are, literally scrutinizing it as you go along. Secondly, you want to ensure that you use proper grammar and spelling in your research paper. Now, a research paper is a very formal document, and if you were to have things like grammatical errors and spelling errors, these things in the research, it will actually compromise the quality of your research. It will impact negatively also how persons perceive and receive your research paper and your findings in general. So you want to make sure that you have that covered. This also means that, as I would have mentioned in a previous video, that you have a language specialist on your team. So you're doing a research, it is imperative that you have a research team, and your team should also include that person who is a language specialist, whom you will give your research to vet, to ensure that it is free from grammatical errors. Also, ensure that you use a clear and concise writing style. So normally, for your research paper, it is normally the line spacing is normally double line. It is normally double line spacing, and in most circles you would use size 12 font and Times New Roman font style. So that is something that you want to pay attention to. You also want to use appropriate citation and referencing styles. Now, again, for the Cape Entrepreneurship students, you would more so be using the APA format. Here I have an example of each. So in the first situation here, this is an example of the MLA style. So this is how you'd actually do a citation in the research paper. So notice the structure here, and this is how it would be referenced. And for the APA style, this is how it would be cited in the research paper, and this is how it would be referenced in your reference section. So please take note of this. And of course, you can get additional information online. There are there's a wealth of information on doing research online. So you can Google whatever it is that you're not clear on. You can also go to YouTube and watch a couple other videos on these things, in addition to consulting with your instructor. Now, the fifth thing I want to talk about here is when you're doing your research paper, it is supposed to be very formal, and there are some do's and don'ts. One of which is that the persons, the participants in an interview, the participants in a research are never to be referred to in first person. So normally use third person language when referring to the parties involved in the research. So you who is doing the research will be referred to as the researcher or researchers, and the persons participating, for instance your interviewee, would be referred to as the participant. You also want to avoid using overly technical language or jargons. And I should say that even if you use technical language or jargons in your research, that you are expected to define these. Now, tip number 7: use tables and figures to present data and results in a clear and easy to understand format. So notice there are two things here. One, it is expected that you use tables and figures to present your data. That's one. And I would invite persons, there's a whole wealth of information online. If you can go to Google and you can Google stuff, or you can go to YouTube and Google stuff to assist you, in addition to assistance from your instructor. But I should also add that where tables and figures are concerned, you can also get information as to how to structure these from like your text. And of course, it is expected that you present the data in a clear and easy to understand format. Where this is concerned, also, if you are that person who perhaps is not really good with figures, here is where you may want to contract the services of that person who is really good at figures. To summarize them in tables and figures for presentation. And this comes back to what I'd mentioned before, that when doing a research, it is important to have a team working with. Tip number 8: be sure to include an abstract, introduction, literature review, methods, results, and conclusion sections in your research paper. And also remember limitations. That is another area too, where you look here at whatever elements, whatever would have happened, events which would have inhibited you, preventing you from ably conducting the research as you would have liked to have done it. Now, for your abstract, the abstract is really and this now is according to services.unimelb.edu.au. It says here that an abstract is a concise summary of a research paper or entire thesis. So basically just giving a summary of your research paper, an overview, and then you have your introduction, your literature review, which I would have spoken to in a previous video. Look at your methods, which is how you go about collecting the data. The results will be your findings. Your conclusion, I spoke about that also in another video, exclusively looking at the conclusion. And of course, remember your limitation. You want to make sure that you have your limitation there. Also, the limitation would speak to whatever inhibitors, whatever events which would have taken place, which would have prevented you from ably completing the research. So your limitations may be, for instance, financial constraints. It may have been some weather conditions that affected you, impacted you, and prevented you, for instance, from meeting with your interviewee on a particular date, or to going out to collect data. It may have been some technological challenge. It could be anything. But it is important that you also have that in your research. Also, tip number 9: use a logical and coherent structure to present your arguments and findings. So here, again, for those students who are doing the Cape Entrepreneurship research paper, that's Unit 1 I'm speaking to specifically here now, you have the course outline in your Cape Entrepreneurship syllabus, so you're expected to use that as your guide as to how to put your research together. But let me also say that one can also get idea, because even coming back to tip number 8, where this is concerned, one can always go online and just go to Google and just type in research paper, or sample research paper, to have an idea, to look at the format of a research paper. So if you've never seen one before, that is an approach that the student can take. Bear in mind too that it did say in the aim on the syllabus that the student, that the purpose of research is to promote self-learning, which means that the student is expected to be actively participating in his or her learning. Number 10, tip number 10, proofread and edit the paper multiple times before submitting. Now, yes, it is not good to submit a research paper that has grammatical or or any other error in it, and that is why it is important, as I I can't overemphasize it, as I would have done in a previous video talking about having a team, having a research team, and on that team there being a language specialist who would be proofreading the research to ensure that it is free of grammatical errors or any other type of error. Okay, so ensure that you have that person who you pass it through, who is checking it to make sure that everything is okay before you submit your research paper. So that concludes my tips looking at writing a research paper, and I should assure you that once you follow these guidelines, that you'll be pretty much good to go. Of course, the list is not exhausted. There are other things to consider, and feel free to if you're new to doing research papers, you can always go online. You can go to Google, you can go to YouTube, and you can do your own individual research to supplement what I would have shared here with you and what your instructor would have shared with you. All right, until next time, take care, and please remember to check out the other videos in this 10-part series. Take care.